So I'm super excited, you guys. I have a feeling that our parents in the group are going to love this conversation. And before we start, I just want to remind or introduce you guys, if you don't know who this is, Courtney is one of our trainers at Inspired Wellness. She's awesome, and she has a great reputation for having an alter ego named Barbara. Can you just tell people about Barbara and kind of like how that came to be?
So when I first started teaching boot camp classes at Inspired Wellness, I made the transition from being a member to a trainer, and I'm totally type A, and so I was absolutely terrified that people were going to hate my classes. So for the people that didn't already know me, I would end my classes and I would say, okay, I'm so proud of each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. If you loved my class, my name is Courtney. If you didn't love my class, my name was Barbara. And it got quite a few laughs. So that's how that started.
And I always laugh because if we ever actually hire Barbara, I feel terrible for Barbara because she's gonna come in with kind of like, a bad reputation. So anyway, super excited for this. As you saw from the title, the goal of this is to give our parents some really valuable resources for how to handle quarantine at home with the kiddos, but you're also a speech pathologist. So you have a lot to say on that subject, and we're going to have a Q&A for sure at the end of this because I have a feeling parents are going to have some questions. So definitely stay to the end, and Courtney will be available for any questions that you have. They could be technical and related to speech therapy, or they might just be related to the conversation that you're going to hear today. So let's kick things off. Why don't you tell us about yourself, a little bit of your history, how you got into this, what you're passionate about, all the things.
Yeah, so I was your typical undergraduate student. I attended UC Irvine, and I knew I always wanted to work with children. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. When I was a senior in high school, I actually did like my senior project shadowing a pediatrician, and I absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, I am your classic example of I got to college and I stopped working as hard as a student. So my pre-med dreams kind of went out the window after my freshman year of college. So I did a lot of soul searching and decided that it was time to change paths. So I went into cognitive psychology, and I double majored in childhood psychology and adolescent development. Originally thinking I would be maybe a marriage and family therapist or a counselor. And then my senior year of college, I started working down in Southern California with a company called CARES. It was the Center for Autism Research, Evaluation, and Services. And I started out as a behavioral therapist. I had no experience with children with autism. I had been a camp counselor when I was in high school, and I just loved kids. So I did that my senior year. And then after I graduated, I worked full-time as a behavioral therapist. So I provided in-home ABA therapy, applied behavioral analysis, therapy services for children with autism all over Orange County, Camp Pendleton. And so I saw a lot of kids. I saw kids of all the autism spectrum, quite a few that were very severely impacted. And it was actually through my work as a behavioral therapist that I realized how important communication is, and how so many of these kids, if they only had the right tools to communicate, it could alleviate a lot of their tantrums, a lot of their aggression, a lot of the frustration that I was seeing in their homes with their families and their caregivers.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack, which I love. So first of all, you're frozen on my screen. So
oh no.
I don't know if maybe the internet connection. Oh no, now you're back. We'll see for how long. Now you're frozen again. Well, anyway, I can hear you. So I want to unpack a little bit about who exactly you work with, because I was surprised when we were talking earlier about who you work with. You have a wide range. I was surprised that you work with as young as you do. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So when I started, I worked with kids from birth all the way up until 18 was my oldest client when I did behavioral therapy, and all ranges. So obviously autism is called the autism spectrum disorder, because the ranges of kids I worked with would be very mild, just simple speech and language delay, to very severe children who are nonverbal, who don't speak. And currently, in my current position as a speech pathologist, I work very similar. I work with children from birth all the way up until my oldest client right now is 16 years old. And again, from all abilities, comorbid diagnoses to just simple speech and language delay.
Awesome. Okay. So let's jump in. I'm excited. I want to just pour value. I know parents right now are struggling. I myself am a parent. I get it. It's hard. Our whole routine is thrown upside down. So tell me a little bit about what is play therapy? How does it, and what are the benefits of the parent-child dynamic as it relates to play therapy? Let's unpack that.
So play therapy is pretty much what it sounds like. It's just a way of interacting and engaging with your child, but it's more nuanced in the sense that a lot of times parents feel overwhelmed by play, or they feel like they don't know how to play with their child. And one of my favorite things to tell a parent, especially when I get a new client, is act like a kid again. If you got to dig deep, you have to remember what it felt like to be a child, but don't be afraid to be silly. And, silly voices or silly faces. And really, play therapy is by what your child is interested in. So a lot of times what will happen is a parent will try to control the play, or they'll try to direct the play, but children learn through play. And so if your child isn't interested in what you're trying to steer or direct them to, then they're not going to engage and they're not going to be learning. Obviously, I always like to put the caveat out there that, safety first. But within reason, follow your child's lead. So play therapy is simply, I will get down on the floor, depending on the age of the child, I'll get down on the floor. And if they want to smash cars into the side of the couch, I'm smashing cars into the side of the couch. And I'm narrating and I'm talking about what they're doing. Oh, you're smashing the blue car, vroom, smash, or, if it's an older child, and they want to build a tower or something like that. So everything with play therapy obviously is going to be impacted by the age of the child and their ability, but that's the basic premise. Follow your child's lead, engage with what they're interested in.
I like this a lot. I feel like I could get better at this. I'm one of those parents who I'll go on Pinterest and I'll see all of these ideas and I think, oh, she's going to love that. And then I put all this time into something and she's like, no, I want to play with that box over there. So I get frustrated because I think I have been trying to control her a little bit in terms of, well, why don't you like this thing that I just did for you and took so much time? So can we talk about that? How, as parents, can we figure out what our kids like? Because you said we need to follow our kids' lead, but one thing about kids is they're kind of all over the place. So how can we figure out what it is that our kids like in terms of following their lead? Because that feels like a trip to Mars to me, to try and somehow decipher what it is my kid likes. But I know there has to be some method to the madness.
Yes, so there is. Obviously, like you said, you can always present choices. And that's one of my favorite things to do, especially with a child who, maybe their favorite thing is spinning around in circles. Obviously, I would not like to spin around in circles for an hour. So I like to present what's called kind of like a forced choice. And this lets, this sounds horrible. It sounds like I'm breaking all the secrets to childhood, but you're basically we've all had this happen to us in our life, where your parents said, do you want to eat carrots or do you want to eat peas? And you're like, oh, well, I was given the choice, so I'm going to choose the peas because I like the peas just a little bit better. It's the same with play. So if you wanted to present your child, do you want to read a book, or should we go blow bubbles? Or should we do sidewalk chalk? Or should we, bake cookies? Something. Obviously, a parent knows their child and they know things that in the past have been successful with their child. But even if you're not sure, present two choices, because children like to feel empowered, and that's how they gain that sense of independence. So if you're not sure and you found two awesome crafts on Pinterest, say, okay, are we going to make a superhero mask today, or are we going to build a spaceship out of this box? And chances are they're going to be pretty excited about one or the other. So.
I like this. So essentially what we're doing is we are reducing their decision fatigue. So we're making it so, because I feel like sometimes kids also get overwhelmed. I know that this is true for Sati. If we leave all her toys just kind of out, she's less likely to engage with them, or she'll just dump them all on the floor and then walk away and do something else. So what we started doing was we started arranging, maybe you can tell me if this is like a good thing. We started putting her toys in boxes. So we have one box for people, we have one box for animals, we have another box for miscellaneous, and then she gets to choose a box. So, hey, what box do you want to play with today? And then, oh, I want to play with the people box. And then we bring that out, and then she engages with those things because she doesn't have like a million things to choose from. So is that kind of along the lines of what you're saying?
Absolutely. And that is a beautiful way to not only, like you said, reduce that, their heads are spinning, they're still learning their world, and they're still navigating, and choice making and independence, and all of these things are happening in those tiny little bodies. So you're helping them to reduce, you're getting rid of the clutter, you're reducing the noise, and you're also teaching her a fantastic skill of categories. So one of the foundations of language is for children to understand categories. So now Sati has a people category, she has an animal category, and within those categories, then you can even start to differentiate, oh, Sati, these are all of your farm animals. The farm animals live on the farm with the farmer, and you can go through sounds. Cow says moo, the chicken says cluck. So everything is kind of like a filter. You've got your big filter, and then you make it smaller. But yes, 100% a fantastic way to eliminate some of that clutter and that distraction, but still helping her to feel empowered. And now she wants to engage because she made the choice.
Okay. So I love this, and I didn't know that was such a good thing. So now I'm feeling like, okay, one parenting point for me. I can screw up everything else, but I have this one parenting point. Let's talk about categories. It sounds to me like categories is something that will help their brain develop. Is that true?
Yes. So some of the theories of language and how we learn language, because there are a lot, and people fall on all different sides of, it's not even a coin. There's not even like this language theory versus this. There's multiple. But one side of the cube, let's say, is the theory that our language is organized in our brain, kind of like a spider web or chunks. And so we create categories, and then within those categories, we attach all of those different words. So the best way I like to describe this to a parent is when a child is first learning language and they're first learning to talk, they might say dog for every animal they see, because maybe you have a dog, and dog is a word that your child hears very frequently. So it's very often reinforced. So your cat is a dog, your neighbor's dog is a dog, your dog is a dog, just like when little girls learn mama, everyone is mama, everybody is mama. But then the child starts to differentiate that dogs have these different properties to them. So, dogs have two ears, dogs have a tail, dogs can be fuzzy or fluffy. So you're associating and you're tying all of these words now to their concept of a dog. And so now their category of dog is going to start to refine itself and get more specific, because a pug is different than a golden retriever versus a lab. So that's how children learn language. So she has her category of animals. She knows animals move, maybe they jump, maybe they bark, maybe they moo, but you're helping her to distinguish within this category, now you have all these other individual parts.
I really like that. Okay. So I want to talk about something that I think is a little taboo in the world of parenting. It's one of those things that you don't want to admit that you do, but you probably do. And for those who don't do it, go you. I'm not knocking you, but okay, I'm just going to say it. TV time. TV time is looked down upon. It's sometimes, but you get people on either side, right? You get the ones that are like, it's the devil. And then you get people who are like, well, I have to be able to take a shower and like go to the bathroom by myself. So can you talk to us about TV time and your thought? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on TV time as it relates to development, but also just what do you think about TV time in quarantine and just managing TV time? Because there are moments as parents where we need to do something as uninterrupted as possible, but then we don't want to feel guilty and like we're terrible people. Can you just shed some light on your thoughts on TV time?
Absolutely. So my first caveat that I always put out there, because this is actually one of the biggest criticisms I receive in my line of work, is I am not yet a parent. So I don't have children of my own yet. I hope to have some someday. But with that caveat, a little asterisk, I have been working with children since I was 13. I was a nanny, I was a babysitter, all the way up until the present day. So I've worked with kids for longer, greater than half of my lifetime. So, but my caveat is that obviously, yes, the research is still out. It's coming in slowly. We believe that less TV time is better than more. However, like you said, there are times where you just need to get stuff done. And I get it. And I tell my parents, I say, look, if you need 30 minutes, if you need an hour to shower, brush your teeth, put on your clothes, maybe make a meal, I am the last person on this planet that is going to judge you. What I do encourage my parents to do with TV time, if they have the ability, is make sure it's somewhat educational. Obviously there is content through, your iPad, your laptop, your computer, technology that is more educational than others. So, PBS Kids, shows where maybe they're learning colors or they're learning shapes or numbers, something that is not just, I'm trying to think of a TV show from when I was a kid, like Beavis and Butthead or something, just completely, it has no content to it that is going to be beneficial at all. So that's if you're going to have to just plop your child down and leave them to their own devices. The other thing I'd like to encourage parents to do is if you have the time, and maybe it's just TV is the only thing that can kind of soothe or self-regulate your child. And there are a lot of children out there that are unfortunately addicted to technology. Then I ask my parents to sit with their child and engage with them as they're watching whatever it is they might be, so hooked on or into. So, I've worked with kiddos where I've done an entire speech therapy session. I'm sitting on the couch next to them. We're watching whatever their favorite show is, but I put it on mute so they can still see it. But then I am narrating of, oh, look, did you see that big blue bird? The big blue bird flew through the sky. So now they're hearing me and they're hearing my narration. And I am just inundating and flooding them with language that, because a lot of shows nowadays, there's this penguin show where nobody talks and they just make weird noises. So I try to tell parents that if that's the type of stuff that your child loves, then be there with them and talk about it and narrate and turn it into a game or turn it into an activity so it's not so one-dimensional.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So essentially, we can turn TV into an educational experience. We can turn TV into a bonding experience. I think having it on mute and all of that. And that's obviously two different dynamics. So one is you're intentionally taking that time, hanging out with kiddo. And the other one is, okay, I need to just, like you said, shower, make some meals, brush my teeth, just, survive for half a second. And I think what I heard from you is neither of those, there's no shame involved. Really, it's just doing what you can do with what you have. And it sounds to me too, as long as you're mindful of the consumption as well. So you're not letting your kid watch it for hours and hours at a time. I think there are going to be those moments in our day, and we have to give ourselves some slack if we go there. And I know I struggled with that in the beginning because, you know, I wanted to be that mom who was just like the craft superstar all day long. We played outside for like 5 hours. But some days it's just not that way, or there's just things that come up. And so, and I love the idea about the educational piece, because there are days where maybe it's rainy and we don't really want to go outside and, I don't know, get super wet, but maybe inside she's already over all the things I've wanted to do with her. We could do something like that, mute it, and then talk about all the different things. So that's an awesome one. Thank you so much. Can we talk a little bit too? I want to skip forward to some of the things that parents can do, because I like what you said, where you had one parent bring you a box and like ask you like, what can I do with this to play with my child? Before we get there, I do want to go back a little bit, and I want to speak to the speech and developmental delays that you work with in specific, because I think it would be helpful for parents, especially because you have a background in this, to understand what are some things to look for. Now, not something to scare people or start being kind of like a hypochondriac about it, but, you know, what are some things that generally pop out when it comes to speech and developmental delays that might prompt a parent to seek your services?
Yes. So first and foremost, I always tell parents, go to your pediatrician. If you have concerns, go to your pediatrician and advocate for your child. A lot of pediatricians, unfortunately, with just the way our society is set up, like to take a wait and see approach. And I am on the other end of that spectrum. No harm. There's no single research study that shows coming to receive speech services does harm. There's no harm in providing your child with extra supports. Obviously, some insurance providers are more willing to offer those supports than others. So that's my first and foremost. Go to your pediatrician if you have concerns, advocate for your child. But some of the biggest kind of red flags that I see or I have seen in children that would kind of highlight maybe there is a delay would be, you know, a lot of children who aren't babbling, you know, so kind of if I start from birth and I work my way up the timeline. So if you have a baby under the age of 12 months and they're not babbling, they're not cooing, they're not making a lot of those vocalizations or those sounds, that would be kind of an initial like, okay, you know, what's going on here? And then, you know, you have all of those classic milestones. Now, those are not hard milestones, and girls are different than boys. The research shows that girls tend to talk earlier and faster and more than boys do. And just a quick, if you're like, why? It's just the way we socialize our children. And little girls tend to do play, you know, going back to the play thing, children learn through play. Little girls tend to do play sequences that have more language in them, you know, dolls and songs and nursery rhymes, whereas little boys tend to do a lot of smash and crash, and, you know, so their language then kind of branches off at that point. So if you have a toddler who's, you know, around 15 to 18 months and they don't have between 35 and 50 words that they use consistently and they use with intent or purpose, then, you know, again, another red flag. We like to say that they have 2-word combinations by 2. So what I mean by that is things like mama juice. So you have the word mama, you have the word juice, they put it together, mama juice. 3-word combinations by 3, daddy go buy. So now the child is adding action words. Go, they've got a representation for daddy, and then they've got buy, meaning, you know, daddy went to work, daddy go buy. So those are just kind of, I could talk about this for hours, so I'm going to cut myself off. But those are kind of some of the red flags that we see. So if there's not a lot of babbling or vocalizations before 1, if we don't have between 35 and 50 words by the time that they're 15 to 18 months, 2-word combinations by 2, 3-word combinations by 3. And then after that 3-year-old mark, it just explodes. My godson is going to be 5 at the end of June, and the kid does not stop talking. So, but I'd be more happy to delve into that if people have specific questions or specific red flags, but those are kind of the general ones that we see.
Awesome. And I do want to mention, because I know myself as a parent, sometimes when she was younger, I found myself Googling a lot, and I would find this article. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's her. And then it would be fine, right? She just needed to get there on her own timeline. So would you say that's true that kids, even if I like what you said about how the milestones are not set in stone. So it's not to be worried, but I think just being aware is always a good thing. And then from there you can take it from there, because I feel like it's really easy for parents to go into the deep end, down the rabbit hole, however you want to say it, in terms of something being wrong, and then that causes a lot of undue anxiety. So in terms of milestones not being set in stone, what would you say to parents who do kind of feel that anxiety and they don't feel like they've gotten what they need from their pediatrician? What is the next step after that?
So yes, I love what you said. And I just want to reiterate that in my entire years of doing this, no two children are ever the same, and no two children follow the same trajectory or the same path. So it's about being aware and understanding how you can supplement your child's language and help them while you're playing this limbo back and forth game with, okay, my pediatrician's not giving me a referral, or I don't know, I want to wait and see. So yes, absolutely. There's key things that need to be in place before any child will communicate. And those are, I have it written down, so I apologize. I'm going to look over here to read it because it's perfect. It's from a great speech pathologist. Her name is Laura Mize, and it's from a book called Let's Talk About Talking. And whenever I get a little kiddo, I always tell parents, these are the 11 skills that a toddler has to master before words can emerge. So, even if your child is older, 3, 4, 5 years old, I recently just acquired a client who didn't start talking until he was 6. So it happens. But the skills are, the first skill is a child needs to react to their environment. So this kind of goes hand in hand with sometimes when parents have concerns about autism or concerns about hearing loss. If your child is not reacting to their environment, so if you drop a dish and your child doesn't even look, because that noise should startle them and they should, react. So children can't learn to talk if they aren't reacting and engaging to what's happening around them. The second skill is that they respond when people talk to them. So again, that goes back to that idea of eye contact and engaging and getting down on your child's level, so they can look you in the eyes, they can see your facial expressions. So if they're not responding or if they have no interest, then again, that's a concern or a red flag. Taking turns. So turn taking is huge for toddlers, and I'm sure many parents out there are banging their heads against the wall because turn taking can turn into a nightmare. So understanding that reciprocity and understanding that our society and how we communicate is give and take, and it's back and forth. So if your child can't take turns or doesn't want to take turns and has no desire to interact or engage with you, again, that would be kind of a red flag. Developing a longer attention span. This one is my favorite because small children have the attention span of a goldfish. Like, let's be honest. So, and it is about, this kind of ties back to following their lead. Kids are going to engage and attend longer and longer if they like what they're engaging and attending with. But again, you can't force it. It has to be very natural. So I will have sessions where I go from playing Play-Doh to blowing bubbles to building a tower to coloring a coloring book. And it'll be 10 minutes later and I'm like, we still have 50 more minutes. What are we going to do? But again, I always like to tell parents to encourage if a child's ready to move on, try to just push just a little bit more. Like, I'm going to use Sati because she'll be my little example. Sati's playing with the people for 5 seconds and then she throws them. You say, Sati, mommy wants a turn. I want to be the doctor, and, march the little doctor person over. Because if you re-engage that child and help them to feel like, oh, I need to help mommy because mommy doesn't know how to play with my toys, then she's going to come back to that. So you're increasing her attention span. So I always like to try to just push the envelope. Okay, one more. We're going to take one more turn, or we're going to play for one more minute. Timers are your best friend. Timers are your best friend. You know, we're going to play with the people, you know, for 5 minutes, and then we can, you know, go jump in the puddles or whatever the case may be. Because then you're also teaching children the concept of time. So I'll brush through the rest of these skills real fast. They can shift and share joint attention. So joint attention, being able to look at what you're looking at or engage with what you're engaging in. They play with a variety of toys appropriately. Obviously, if they're just running around banging toys on the floor, you have to show them how to play with it first. But after you model and show them how to play with it, if they're still struggling to play with the toy appropriately, then we might have some concerns there. Understanding early words and following directions. My favorite way to do this is Simon Says. It's a great game to practice following directions. And you can kind of probe how many words your child knows. So, you know, Sati, Simon says, touch your nose. And she's here. She's, oh, yeah, good job, Sati. Simon says, pat your belly. And she's doing this. Oh, nice try. I thought that was your head. Let's see, where's your belly? And then you know, maybe model for her belly. So following directions is huge, because as kids make the transition from the home environment to the school environment, unfortunately, they're going to have to follow someone else's directions that aren't yours. So to make that transition as smooth as possible, you want to make sure that they know how to follow directions and they understand what they're hearing. Vocalize and make sounds purposefully, and imitate actions and gestures. And so things like waving, you know, high fives. Gestures are such a large part of our language. As you can see, this entire time I've been gesturing with my hands. So those are all of the foundational skills that children need to master before language will emerge.
I really dig all of those things. I love this because as a mom of a 2-year-old, I feel like these are things. So for example, her attention span, I never thought of that because I feel like she does want to go from thing to thing, like every 2 minutes. And it is exhausting. It's like, okay, we've exhausted all the things I thought I wanted to do today. I love those ideas. And so what I also like is even if your child is not experiencing any delays, what you just described are things that we as parents can incorporate just in general, you know, like with the attention span. Absolutely, I can do that with her. I love the idea of Simon Says. And so I think those are such good tips, regardless if a child has developmental delays. I feel like kids and parents, would you say this is true as well? This might not be your realm as much, but when it comes to the child and the parent bonding, it seems like that's really good too. How deep do you go in your field in terms of child and parent bonding?
It is a huge part of what I do. I always tell parents, like you said, regardless of delay or not, the things that a speech therapist does are beneficial to any child. They don't have to have a diagnosis. They don't have to have a delay. They don't have to have a disorder. What I teach is beneficial to any child and any parent-child interaction. And I tell parents every single time I see them, I have your child for maybe 1 hour a week. You have your child for 99% of the time. So a huge part of my job is, yes, to work with the child one-on-one, but it's actually to work with the parent and to coach and encourage and support the parent and to show the parent how I've been trained to interact with children and specifically their child, so that when they leave my office, you know, before COVID-19, or when the teletherapy session is done, their task is to continue it in the home environment, because the only way their child is going to grow and develop and learn is if they continue these skills in the home environment. So I focus a lot of my effort and attention and energy on not only the child, but that relationship between the parent and the child, and also the parent's well-being. I always check in with my parents and see how they're doing mentally, emotionally, and just so that if they're in a good space, then they're in a good space to help their child.
That's a great point, because we can't give to others if our cup isn't full. I did a video recently in the group and I actually had a physical cup and I explained how the things that we do fill that cup. But if we go through our day with nothing in it, and it just, what are we taking from at that point? I think a lot of parents, myself included, we go through days like that where we have this and we're just trying to take from nothing, like thin air. And we might find ourselves yelling more or being exasperated more, frustrated more. I had that day just the other day and I felt terrible. So I just want to put a little shout out to self-care and self-love as a parent. And I can just speak to my own experience. You know, when I meditate in the morning, when I journal, when I call a friend, when I go get nature therapy, like all of these things are adding to my cup so that when, you know, inevitably there's going to be moments of parenthood that are just exhausting, draining, frustrating, but at least I have the bandwidth because my cup is full and I'm not just taking from thin air. So I love that you mentioned that, because parents that are exhausted and worn down, and so many parents are because they stop taking care of themselves. And I've always been an advocate for, you can't show up if you're not showing up for yourself. And even more so with your children, but also just with everyone, like my clients, my husband, my family. So thank you for mentioning that. I want to steer the ship a little bit and go toward some actionable strategies that parents can take away from this conversation. One of them being, like I said, back to that moment that you had that parent come to you with that box and they said, what can I do with this? So what are 3 actionable strategies? No, even before that, actually, I want to backtrack. What are some things that parents can do at home with items that they might already have? Because we are at a time when it's hard to order things in a timely fashion. We're not going out as much. So do you have some examples of just like general household activities that parents can maybe start with, and they could try that choice thing too, A or B?
Absolutely. So I am a huge advocate and fan of books. You can literally do anything and everything with a book, because beyond just simply reading the book, and yes, that is absolutely important, but I have parents that are like, are you kidding me? You know, my little Joey will not sit still for 5 seconds. I'm not going to chase him around the house to read a book. But you can take books and you can turn them into real life activities. So, you know, chicka chicka boom boom. It's got, you know, that rhythm and that beat to it. So I'll do dance parties with the kids. So I'll turn on some music, and even if it looks like they're not listening, I'll read chicka chicka boom boom and I'll be dancing and I'm reading chicka chicka boom boom and they're dancing. And movement, anything with movement, kids learn through movement. I am a big fan of shaving cream. Put it on the table, put them in an old t-shirt, you know, put it on the table and let them paint or let them draw, let them play with their fingers, that kinesthetic, that motor input with those fingers. You know, I'll do letters and, you know, oh, A, apple, you know, different things like that. Bath time is a great time for language. You know, this is the way we wash our elbow, and then you're teaching them elbow and you're washing their elbow. You know, bubbles are a great thing in the bathtub, in the backyard, if you have a backyard. Chalk, sidewalk chalk, coloring. My gosh, my brain is racing, spinning. I mean, again, like if your kid comes up to you and has a shoe, you know, okay, let's play hide the shoe. Like, okay, you go hide the shoe and mommy's gonna try to find it. And literally, like, they hide it on their head and you're like, huh, I wonder, where did that shoe go? Like, so obvious, but they're gonna end up in giggles and they're gonna be laughing and they're gonna be having such a good time. And you're working on prepositions and they didn't even know it. The shoe was on your head. Like, so I could, like I said, I could talk for hours, but there are so many ways and so many different things around your house that you can turn into, I mean, a box, turn it into a rocket ship, or turn it upside down and now it's a drum. Or, you know, decorate it, have them build a little dollhouse, make a ramp for their race cars. Gosh, yeah. So I am more than happy at the end of this. I will give my contact information. And if parents are like, I've got handouts. I've got anything that people could want or need. So.
Well, and you gave us 8 awesome suggestions with that. And what I took from that is sometimes we just need to not get so detailed. There are things that are in our home already that are at our disposal that we're probably just not thinking of because they're not fancy and they're not glittery and shiny. And I've done that before, and I stopped this, thankfully. But in the beginning, homegirl got a lot of expensive toys and she played with them for like 3 seconds. The stuff that she likes now are random, animal figurines that I bought on Amazon Marketplace. She will give them a bath in the sink for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. And she likes it by herself. She goes, "Mommy, leave." Like, she doesn't want me in the room. So she puts them in the sink, and I put bubbles. So I love that you're inspiring me too, because there are so many things that we have around the house that I just don't ever think about, because I always think of a formal toy being what's going to keep her occupied, but I could totally do so many of these things, as I'm sure other parents could too. So, and if they have specific questions, we're going to head into our Q&A. So, if anyone does have specific questions on anything at all, could be play, could be speech, could be development, we'll go into that. But before we do that, I just want to mention thank you. You gave us so much. And I like that you also blended, that we need to simplify. Things don't need to be so complicated. We need to give ourselves some slack and rely on the tools that we already have at our disposal versus always looking outside to see if there's something better. I'm guilty of that too. And my wallet is happier since I discovered that because I had already kind of started down the path of simplification and lots of Facebook Marketplace purchases. And, at the thrift store, I'm basically a millionaire because she can have whatever she wants, within reason. So yeah, no, I love that. So let's head into our Q&A. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to leave parents with, can you think of anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure that we kind of drive home?
Well, my favorite line to tell a parent, besides the play and follow your child's lead, like you said, simplify. You don't have to be like a Picasso or some creative genius. I mean, I get silly. I look at something and I'll go, okay, what could I do with that? Or I'll hand it to the child and see what they do with it. And then I follow what they're doing. So if they want to put it on their head and now it's a hat and we're marching around the house and we're having a hat parade. So yes, simplify, be silly. But my favorite is, especially for the little ones or ones that you might be concerned of a delay, I always tell parents, be Morgan Freeman. And what I mean by that is your house, your home should just be filled with language. So if you have any concerns about your child's language or development, narrate everything. Morgan Freeman narrates everything. So you're making dinner. Oh, look, Sati, mommy's chopping the tomatoes. Chop, chop, chop. Lots of repetition. Children learn through repetition. So saying things many, many times. If it's bath time, narrate what you're doing in the bath. If it's, getting dressed in the morning, narrate everything. Because if your child is constantly hearing that language and getting that input and seeing you, that's how speech and language develops.
Be Morgan Freeman. That's going to go in the description when I put this on YouTube for sure. So let's open it up for Q&A. I know Andy is with us here. So Andy, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask them. I'm going to go on Facebook. And there is a bit of a delay, so I'm going to wait here for a second. And if we don't have any live questions, you said, about contacting you after the fact, so we can certainly do that. But I'll go in here and see if there are any questions. And by the way, Megan Murphy, she said 2 of my most favorite things. Megan is, she's affiliated with First Five. You're familiar with them, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can see why that would be. Oops. Let's see, close. This was so fun. I got so much just even for myself. I feel like
well, while we're waiting to see if there are any questions, yes, First Five is a fantastic resource. PBS Kids
that. Can you, yes, sorry, let me write that down. I'm going to put this in the notes. So just some good resources. So First Five.
Yes. So First Five is an initiative just to get parents to engage and talk with their children, talking about how the first 5 years of your child's life are the most formative for their brain and their development and those foundational skills. So First Five really advocates for reading and singing, nursery rhymes, songs, music, books, and play. So First Five is fantastic. PBS Kids, especially right now because there is a lot of screen time, like I said, their games are a little bit more educational. They're more interactive. You can really build upon them. Other resources, obviously, the library is closed right now, but there are a plethora of websites that are offering, free materials, ABC Mouse, Vooks, so VOOKS. It takes classic storybooks and it animates them. So even though, again, there's that technology piece, just kind of working within the realm of what we have right now, it's fantastic, especially if your kiddo doesn't want to sit down and actually read a book. But yeah, just continuing to sing and play and just love your child. I just tell my parents at the end of the day, if you love your child, that's what you need to do.
Yay. Okay. And then Cindy, she commented that she would like to speak to you. So I'll connect you two on Facebook if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
She said, thank you for doing this. This is really helpful. So you inspired some lives today. Of course, I knew you would because you're awesome. Awesome. So, okay. Well, thank you. I love that we were able to have you on, and I love that we were able to get this into the rotation because I know that there are so many parents who, all of our topics are amazing, but this is so specific to those who have kiddos and need some help and direction. So I'll send the info with Cindy in a little bit. And then anything else, or we're good?
No, and if you're at your wit's end, yes, please feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. I will send you ideas. I have plenty of handouts, lots of stuff. So just connect with me. And like I said, I do this for a living, and it's my passion, and I love it, and I could talk about it all day long. So I'm more than happy to be a resource to anyone who needs it.
And before we go, I do just want to say that this was so fun for me because I see you in the space of Courtney, the fitness trainer. And so I was able to see you in a whole different light. We don't ever really, I know what you do and I know it's impactful, but I can see how much you care. And I can see how that would have and that is giving me chills to even say it, but how much that would impact a child's life because, your level of care is so incredibly important. It's not just a job to you, I can tell. So that's awesome. This was exciting for me to just be able to see the other side of you. So
well, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for having me. I absolutely loved it. So
yay. Okay, well, I'll be posting this on YouTube probably within the next couple days. I'll share the link so that you guys can maybe share it too with people that and just get the word out there. I think this is such a great topic. More parents need to hear it. You guys have an amazing weekend. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and hop off Facebook Live. All right, here we go. All right, we are off Facebook. Cool. Well, that was